Hi everyone, it's August 3rd, 2023, and this is the weekly Backdrop Developer Meeting. We get together every week to talk about development priorities for the Backdrop CMS project. My name is Nate Lampton. I'm Quick Sketch on the Internet, technical lead for the Backdrop project, and I'm calling in from Nederland, Colorado today. I'm visiting with my parents. Let's see, we'll go to Joseph and then Wilbur.
Hi, I'm Joseph. I'm a developer from Las Vegas, Nevada, and a core committer for Backdrop, although I don't really do that very often.
Thanks, Joseph, Wilbur, and then Justin.
Yeah, I'm Wilbur Ince. I live in the Twin Cities of Minneapolis, St. Paul, and yeah, happy to be here.
Thanks, Wilbur, and Justin.
Justin Christopherson in Denver, Colorado. I help out with infrastructure as I can.
All right. Well, thank you all for joining us today. Let's see. We also normally do a little recap of new contrib modules that have come out recently. Wow, it looks like in the last week there have been a lot, actually. Let's see, from the 25th. I wasn't here last week, so maybe I'll recap some of the ones in case they were not mentioned last week. But one new module is actually the blog module has been available for Backdrop starting July 21st. Wilbur would actually like to talk a little bit more about that, but let's get through the other contrib modules that have come out. Plugin Manager, Encrypt, Field Encrypt, Empty Fields, Core Issues Helper, Masked Input, Time Field, and Entity Revision Logs. That's almost 10 modules that have come out in the last 2 weeks in the Backdrop Contrib group. So that's exciting. That's a lot of new modules in a very short time. I'm guessing 4 of them all came out on the same day. I'm guessing that somebody launched a new website that needed field encryption, and then that just like kind of snowballed into 4 new contrib modules. So sometimes that does. Yeah, but that's very exciting. Wilbur, you want to talk about the blog module? I am curious, what's going on with that, and what kind of questions you have around it.
Sure. The idea is that blog was a core module that didn't get ported to Backdrop, and I'm surprised that it hasn't been ported until now, because if people have built a Drupal 7 site, and even Novus developers or Novus users could have enabled the blog module and went to town building a website, their path forward of migrating from Drupal 7 is complicated by that. And so by having a blog module available, we don't necessarily want people to use it, but if they have a lot of blogs, this can allow them to import their content directly as part of the migration process. So seems to be a perfect contrib module, not to be in core, and just available for pulling that content in and making the migration process easier. So
Yeah, that's great. I recall even trying to remember what blog module actually did. Blog module essentially creates per user blogs. So it makes like a URL at let's see, what is it? Blog/user ID, and that's that individual user's blog list of posts that they've created of the blog content type. Yeah, there's no doubt that omitting it may have made upgrading more difficult for any users that had used it. But I think as far as like what functionality provided, any new site would be discouraged from using blog module because it could be built out of the box using the core post content type combined with a view, and that would achieve the same thing really quickly.
exactly, right.
Yep. But yeah, that's great that is available for upgrading. Did that impact you in some way, or
I have a couple of sites with old blog posts, really ancient Drupal 7, maybe from Drupal 6, maybe from Drupal 5 websites. So I just thought I would perfect that so that it's available for other people too. So
Were you in any way involved with the porting of this module to the Backdrop
Nope.
Contrib group?
no,
No, just
I
convenient
think that
timing.
might be Joseph that did that, and I'm just here to give it a try and give some feedback.
I did not do that.
Yeah,
Oh.
it looks like it was Herb Duel.
Oh, yeah.
But great. Yeah, thanks for the little recap on that contrib module. Let's see, other exciting things. Well, just generally, a little time check here. It is now August 3rd. That means we've moved into the last month of the current feature freeze. So at the end of this month, or more accurately, the beginning of next month, it will be the feature freeze date for Backdrop 1.26. So let's see, that lands on September 1st is a Friday. I don't think that's a holiday. We'll need to check it if that means that September 1st is going to be the feature freeze date. Sometimes we end up pushing that back a couple of days, but we'll kind of clarify that as the month goes on. It's kind of looking like this next release of Backdrop Core is going to have a lot of heavy emphasis on just modernization, getting things up to date. We have PHP 8.2 support, updating our versions of jQuery. We are working on updating CKEditor to CKEditor 5 as well, although that's still really unlikely that that would be something that gets into 1.26, although pretty likely that it will be available as a contrib module. It got me thinking this week that because CKEditor 4 is going to be end of life in November, and if we don't get it into this release, that pretty much means that it'll be impossible for us to include CKEditor 5 in core or remove CKEditor 4 from core or deprecate it or anything before its end of life actually hits. Its official end of life actually hits. It got me thinking that maybe what we should be doing is finding some interim way of informing our Backdrop users about the future of CKEditor and what they can do in the meantime while we're in this period where there is a CKEditor 5 module, but it's not yet ready for core, putting into core. Like we can inform them somehow saying, hey, CKEditor 4 is moving, like is no longer officially supported. Here's what you can do about it. And I think that at some point we'd even talked about CKEditor 4 does have an official LTS program where if someone so chose, they could actually work directly with CKEditor source or CK source for additional support for their site, and not depend on Backdrop core for doing its updates. And so I'm not sure if that's something that we could or would want to leverage, but it is something that we have available as an option that we could include that in our list of like, hey, here's what to do about CKEditor in the meantime. Or maybe this is not something that's core module or core code related, but maybe a blog post, just letting people know what their options are. That they can purchase an LTS support contract from CKEditor source, or they could switch over to the contrib module of CKEditor 5. Both of those would be viable options to being on maintained and supported software. Or things like, maybe, just make it so that only trusted users can use CKEditor would be a fine way of mitigating any potential security concerns with running an unsupported piece of software. Is just make sure only trusted users have access to it. All those things might be viable things to recommend. Let's see. So related to updating our libraries, IndigoZilla has been continuing to go through our various dependencies and get them running on the latest versions. She opened a new issue, well, actually continued working on existing issue 5705, update jQuery UI to the latest version. We keep coming back to this issue every time there is a new version of jQuery UI. And in the last couple of weeks, IndigoZella rebased the pull request there. Kiem Laluno tested the upgrade a couple days ago, and so this pull request is currently marked works for me, but not quite. It says the only thing that it's still pending on, I guess, is a code review. So that might that's something that could use some eyeballs. Let's see, and then she also opened up issue 6185, which is updating other jQuery libraries that we have dependencies on. And so far, that only includes upgrading the jQuery form JS library, which has a new version that is pretty trivial to update. And then she's also looking at jQuery Touch Punch, which is just kind of a little bit of a funny library that in theory makes jQuery UI's drag and drop work on mobile devices. I hope that someday jQuery UI is kind of like hobbling along in a very minimally supported state. Not having touch support like almost decades now after mobile devices first came onto the scene is really a really big knock on that library. Someday, potentially, if it gets maintained and a new version comes out, we will no longer need Touch Punch because drag and drop would be built, or mobile drag and drop functionality would actually be included in that library. But for now, IndigoZella has identified a fork of Touch Punch that is more frequently maintained and does the job of adding mobile support to jQuery UI. So 6185 also is working towards getting that included in the pull request. All right. Those are all of the topics that I had for today. Does anyone have any other issues that they've been looking at recently, or anything that they'd like to talk about core or contrib wise? No? Any other?
I don't have anything else, but I'd be curious to talk more about like what we would need to do to get CK Editor 5 done.
Yeah. Well, one key thing is that, first of all, the work is happening in my sandbox right now, and the very first thing that needs to happen is I need to move that into contrib, because it's usable. It's more stable than a lot of contrib modules. But there's a lot of tasks that still need to be complete there. So where this lives is under github.com quick sketch CK Editor 5 is where this lives. I'll put a link to that in our chat. Here you go. And there are 20 open issues right now. We've already been using the issue queue on here to track the things that need to be fixed. And there's still quite a few key things here that are blockers. Maybe I should actually set up a label for what is a blocker. Let's see. Trying to think which ones of these are really important. We haven't integrated with the image browser yet. That's actually issue number 1 in the contrib module. Right now, when you click the image button, it gives you the option to select the file from your disk, or and you can copy paste. Those are kind of like the two options right now. But what it should do is it should open up the modal dialog for inserting an image. We do have the modal support for inserting a link, but we don't have that for images yet. And that will require some custom plugin development. Let's see. I think. Oh, and then the really important thing is generic HTML support. So backwards compatibility. If you edit something that contains HTML tags that CKEditor 5 is not prepared to handle, then we need to make it so that CKEditor 5 doesn't strip out those tags. So in CKEditor 4, you could set up the text editor to support things like DL and DD, for example, are enabled out of the box, data definition and data list components. But CKEditor 5 doesn't know how to deal with those. And even though you could say these tags are enabled in the filtered HTML tag list, in CKEditor 4, it would just render them using the browser's, default rendering of those elements. But in CKEditor 5, it takes all HTML elements and then it converts them into an internal representation for CKEditor to render them. And then if it doesn't know how to handle a particular tag, then it just strips it out. And so there's this plugin called generic HTML support that we haven't started using yet, but generic HTML support makes it so that CKEditor 5 shows those tags that it doesn't know how to handle when it encounters them, but it becomes uneditable content. So it's kind of like a compromise where at least it doesn't wipe your content out, but it also isn't great for doing day-to-day editing. You have to switch to source mode in order to change that content and then switch back. But that's kind of the number of situations in which this occurs when creating just general blog content, I hope is going to be, these are edge cases that we need to handle. But it's still pretty important that we not, corrupt or lose people's content when they hit edit on a piece of content and then CKEditor loads it in. We don't want it stripping out tags.
Right.
So that's like a really important thing that we need to get figured out. And other than that, testing, like our test suite is like I haven't even started looking at it yet. So I think that's also a key
Right.
element. Jenna looks like she also opened up a list of issues that are currently still open even for the Drupal version of CKEditor 5 that have been causing her problems in the Drupal land. Yeah, this is kind of some interesting things. No height and width attributes on images. CKEditor removes empty inline elements. I'm guessing that's like a that's a common thing with Font Awesome. I'm guessing that's what's probably affecting her. CKEditor 5 removes anchor tags that wrap HTML elements not natively supported by CKEditor 5. Yep.
Okay.
So interesting. So yeah, does that answer your question, Joseph?
Yeah, I think that's good.
Yeah, it's pretty clear, like what needs to be done is pretty well covered in the issue queue. But I think that those two things are the biggest ones: image browser and HTML support, generic HTML support.
Right.
But it is kind of fun just to try it out. Like there isn't a release yet, and this is another reason why it needs to be moved into Contrib, is when it gets moved into Contrib, then we can make an alpha release, and then it can be available through Project Browser, and that will make people that are using that want to try out the new version, it'll have a much easier way of finding it if there's an official
Right.
release and they can use Project Browser to install it. Okay. One last call. Anybody have any other topics? Otherwise, we will just close for today. Thank you all for being here today. Really fun looking through all these new contrib projects that are happening. I know some people are out there building backdrop websites as always, so it's really awesome to see what comes out of them. So, all right, thank you so much. We'll catch everybody next week then. Okay.